Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 196. Let me do my little bit of boomer tech that I have to do before each stream, which basically is waiting for YouTube to actually start. That's not one done. And that's not one done. Okay, that should stop all the echoes. Okay, as always, I'm going to start us off with a tune.
Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile to serve your captive steed, to wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wall. Your new gods sullen peoples have devil and child. Take up in case to abide, to veil the threats of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, what's not that Eden for thee? Bring all your hopes to naught. Take up the white man's burden, not taught to rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your giving and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his soul's reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard, the cry of those ye humor are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, a loved Egyptian guys? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall weigh your gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly prophet laurel, the easy young God's praise. Comes out to search your manhood through all of thankless years. No ends with dear bought wisdom, the judgment joy of years. Take off the white man's burden through all the endless years.
Right. And that was, of course, the excellent Chris Gard do go and check out his YouTube channel. He's got some very good music on there. He's one of us. He's on the right. And he's a genuinely good musician, and he's also a relatively new dad too. So he walks the walk as well as talking the talk. So yeah, go and check out Chris Gard. Welcome to my guests this evening, to Mitch, to AI, and to Hitman. A lot happened this week in terms of British news. So most of this stream is going to be British stuff. We will be talking about the US election next week when we know the result. I say when we know the result, hopefully we know the result next week. So, yeah. I see Aubrey Alley in the chat is saying that she's been deregistered to vote in the American election, which is very strange given that, you know, she's an American lady. So anyway, yeah, we will talk about the US election next week. The trouble is, I think until it actually happens, it's going to be more interesting to talk about what happened, because the crazy thing that might happen in the US election is if it gets stolen again. You know, if somehow or other Kamala Harris wins, that is just going to be crazy if that happens. But you know, but we'll talk about that next week. Will we talk about the recent murders that have happened in Ireland? Says Duke Valentino. Boy, if anyone on my panel knows anything about them, yes. Anyway, as always, I'm going to start off by asking the guests if they have the first subject for this evening, and I'm going to go clockwise. So I'm going to start with Mitch. Mitch, did you have a first subject for this evening?
I think I'll share. I think I'll share this one tweet that basically sums up what has been going on in terms of the Tory leadership election. If you can see that, Duke.
Can I see it? Yeah. I think I can. There you go.
So this is the Tory boy take on Kemi Badenoch winning the Tory election. Mummy won.
The Nigerian lady, you mean?
Yeah. I mean, what is there to be said about that, other than just complete embarrassment that these people dominate the centre right, quote unquote.
Well, it's basically that's your standard Tory boy dummy mummy fetish ever since Thatcher.
Yeah, yeah. It's, you know, I said like in the discourse, words to the effect of I'd be okay with flogging came back as a punishment, just flog people for having like really terrible takes as a journalist in the local Thames Square. This is one of them.
She when she first joined the so-called Conservative Party, in air quotes, she said she was joining to represent Nigerians in Britain. She actually said it. I watched what's his name, the guy from the Lotus Eaters, Mitch,
Connor Tomlinson.
Connor Tomlinson. He actually put up on Twitter, on X, he put up a quote from her with a photograph saying she was there to represent Nigerians. So yeah, she plays identity politics just like all of these immigrant people do.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that so everyone loves to cover baby by saying, "Oh well, she was born in Britain, therefore she's as British as us." And I go, "Yeah, she's an anchor baby born in 1980, back when the law was you only had to be born here." Because before Thatcher redid the law regarding citizenship back in 82 or 83, we basically have the same laws about citizenship as the Americans currently do in terms of birthright citizenship. So Kemi Badenoch being born here back in 1980 means that she's got a free ticket to a passport.
I've seen her family described as doing health tourism, basically.
Yeah, that's essentially what they did. Because as soon as she was born, they went back to Nigeria, and then she only moved over when she was like 16 or something. So, and English is not her first language either, because you can clearly tell with her voice. It's a very sort of, I don't know what the precise wording would be, but you can tell English is not her first language. Like she probably spoke Yoruba, I think, as Choibas.
Yeah. So she's definitely Nigerian. I mean, she shortens her name to Kemi, but it's actually much longer than that and tribal.
Yeah,
It's
Olu
oobly boobly Kemi. I'm not joking. I think that's what it is. It's like oobly boobly or something like that.
I think that her winning the so-called Conservative leadership election is very good for Farage and Reform, and also for the rest of us who are on the real right. I think it's good that she's won, because
It's also good for home. It's good for Homeland. It's good for many different groups on the right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's good for like all of us on the real right, and I'm slightly at the moment, sadly, having to make Farage and Reform a bit side from that, because they're not going far enough, in my opinion, at the moment. But presuming that the British public are not going to be dumb enough to vote Labour again after all that's happened with the Labour Party in just 3 months, if it's a contest between Nigel Farage and a Nigerian woman, that's a no-brainer to me. I'm going to vote Farage.
Yeah,
and
it's. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, and as what was noted earlier on the scoop by GB News, the Tory party have actually increased the threshold required for a no confidence vote from 15% of MPs to 33%. So it's now
they've
even more
fortified
difficult.
her. They've fortified her.
Yeah.
Craziness. Just craziness, It
Indeed.
really is. I just... The Conservatives were given an open goal by two-tier care and the Labour Party, and somehow they contrived to miss. It's very strange.
Yeah, it's how did Morgoth put it? Basically, so the Labour Party as a goalkeeper, they're out on the piss. The goal is wide open, and the Labour Party themselves have committed an unnecessary foul, resulting in a penalty. And the Tories, as the supposed goal scorer, have still found a way to screw it all up. So the only I mean, you get some people saying Reform going nowhere, and chatting to go. I suppose it depends on. I mean, let's say for argument's sake, in a year's time, because we're going to get farmers' protests after this budget, which I imagine we'll talk about later. I imagine Reform pretty much also has an open goal just waiting for them. So in a year's time, I expect to see Reform polling top or joint with Labour at the very least. Because, Labour have already lost their lead as of this week's polling. So that's got to be some sort of record. Like, an incumbent government newly voted in losing its polling strength in the space of not even 5 months, not even 6 months.
I don't think there's ever been as unpopular a prime minister as two-tier Keir Starmer.
Yeah, and Harry Robinson of Lotus, he said, there's rumours that Keir Starmer wants to resign, and I was thinking that's too good to be true.
Yeah.
I think Steve Laws said he thinks he'll probably keep Starmer in until Easter and then get rid of him, maybe.
But who's going to I can't see anyone in the Labour Party cabinet who can replace him that will be any better.
It does appear that within Labour that there is does appear to be Blairites on manoeuvre, because again you had the behind the scenes, the friction with Sue Gray and McSweeney, who sort of turned their back on many neo-libs, neocons, Blairite types. So unless they got somebody lined up, I can't envision Angela Rayner or anyone like that taking the helm.
I could see Rayner maybe as Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I could see Rayner maybe as an interim PM while they're having a leadership election or something, but not long term, no.
I noticed Puffwagon in the chat is saying that Reform are going nowhere. Well, you know what? We spoke about this last week on this stream. I'm happy to give Farage and Reform conditional support at the moment, because Homeland Party are not even going to be fielding MPs, as far as I'm aware, at the next election. When they are, then I may well support them, depending on what their policies are. But at the moment, they're not, and so reform is our only option at the moment. If you're in Britain, so you know.
And also, speaking of the US election, I mean, if Trump does get re-elected, that's a very strong boost for Farage against Starmer, because he'll have backing up from Trump.
Oh, yeah.
And also about reform being weak, I do agree they have been a bit weak, but in the past week, Farage has been a bit better, because obviously we've had the whole smoking gun of the government lying about the Southport murderer, and Farage jumped on that.
We're going to come on to that, Hitman, I'm sure, during this stream, because if no one else brings it up, I certainly am. But yeah, look, Labour have been a disaster, just a total disaster, and they didn't have a very hard job. I mean, we've been talking about open goals and so on. Like, Labour had a pretty open goal too, but like two-tier care completely effed it up. You know, it's like most people in Britain now detest him, quite rightly. You know, there's some strange noises from somewhere, and it isn't me. It's stopped now. Hang on. Let me see. Is that better? Yes, that's better. Okay. So yeah, look, I'm totally agreeing with Mitch on this one. I think I think actually Badenoch winning is good for us. I think it's also good for Farage. I think if I was Nigel Farage, I'd be very happy right now, because Badenoch is not going to save the so-called Conservatives. And the Worcester Club, some people like, you know, I get on with some people in the Worcester Club, not everyone, but there are good people in the Worcester Club, and they did a tweet pointing out that the vote for Badenoch as Conservative leader is by far the lowest one there's ever been for a Conservative leader, and they've been going down ever since Cameron. This is a dying party.
I mean, the Conservative Party is largely, from people remaining in it, and I have seen today people who claim to be members have been saying, you know, that's it, I quit. Because, I mean, that's not, you know, they're being practical here. One of the reasons Rishi Sunak lost is because he wasn't English, he was an Indian.
Yes, that didn't help. Yes,
yeah, it didn't help.
And he was also never elected, even by the Conservative Party members.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the thing though is that if you look at all the minority groups, including the Nigerians, they all operate on like self-tribal or group interest. And I think what we're seeing now, and why a lot of Civnats, people like that I've been having a go at today, her name's Jess Giles, I think, or someone like that, and Lawrence Fox, is that that sort of way of thinking has been totally, and I would say, you know, completely obliterated from public discourse, because it's so obvious now that effectively everyone is operating on tribal self-group interests apart from us. And I think that's why this isn't 2010 anymore. This isn't even a couple years ago. I think there's been a wider awakening, and I mean, ultimately, this is why I think it's a good thing in many ways, because the Conservative Party will become the party of minority interests, minority groups, Nigerians, Indians. It'll be a mighty coalition of that. And maybe the remaining sort of like diehard boomers or something will probably just die off in natural course.
And it's funny you say that, AI.
Carry on.
Sorry, it's funny you say that, AI, about Indian support, because I remember it was like a day or two before we had the election in the summer. The story got leaked, and it was about how there's this like group of like Tory MPs that are like, they're like how in America they've got like those PACs or PACs for like, you know, you've got like the APAC for the Israel. There was like a version of that, but for like Indians with like British Tory MPs, and it was like so I mean, they're literally doing it out in the open pretty much. So.
Yeah, look, I've got to agree with Count Darkheg with the comment that I'm just putting up here. Like, someone calls me racist, I just laugh. Honestly, I mean, all humans are more or less racist. It's just fact.
I mean, I was a couple of weeks ago, I was accused at work, or somebody levied that there was like an argument, and that was one of the accusations levied against me. Now I had to remember I'm not AI in IRL, because IRL me, internet me would just go yes, and that's good, but it is funny that even in real life, when I've had that sort of levied against me, and I wasn't being racist, it was just usual chip on the shoulder sort of power move by the person accusing me. But one thing that was interesting was, even though IRL, it didn't actually have that effect like it would have done,
Yep.
many years ago. So even in real life, it's kind of like, so what? It just
I think
didn't pack a punch.
I think the answer to that in real life and everywhere is, if someone calls you racist, you turn around and say, and it's like, I don't care.
Yeah, and the thing though is, it is just really, I mean, today the Conservatives, and we'll probably, the other thing that's been going on with this is James Cleverly, who tweeted out, and this wasn't like him saying woke. He was trying to do like, oh, look at us, the left are the real, the real racists, and he said like, Keir Starmer, what was it, pale, stale, and or whatever, that old trope from back in 2015.
And I was
time.
pleased to know everyone, like all the good guys, like Dan from the Lotus Eaters and Morgoth, and everyone else was pointing out, well, we'll all note that as if you're pale, stale, and all that stuff, and they're talking about white Anglo-Celtic Brits, well, we'll all remember that. And, when we come to the vote.
I like Josh from the Lotus Eaters quote tweet. It was like, well, you're just Browns, clowns, and pronouns, which I thought was a good
100%, man. 100%, mate. 100%. Look, I was once in a pub in Australia, and I was sitting around talking with my mates, who are not all Australians. Some of them are from other places, but they're all pretty much all of them are ex-military guys. And one of the guys who was with us that night was a Maori guy who'd been in the New Zealand Navy, and people had obviously been listening to our table because we were getting a bit pissed, as ex-military guys will when they're having a drink, and we were probably a little bit loud. But then someone said, "You guys are so racist," and the Maori guy just laughed at him. It was like it was quite funny.
Yeah.
Because trust me, the Maoris are pretty racist if you're not Maori, But yeah, it's. I think we've just got to laugh it off. Basically, it shouldn't be an insult that works with anyone on the right. It really shouldn't. We should just say "and,"
No, true.
So what? But that's my view. Mitch, did you have anything else to say on this particular subject?
I mean, I was always on the sort of wanting Kerry to win to ensure total Tory death, but at the same time, it's also, I can understand where people were coming from and saying we wanted Jenrick to win. If nothing else, it forces Farage to be more proactive on certain matters. Yeah. However, I mean, this is the main danger. Is like, how do we know Farage won't just sit on his laurels because he knows full well that Kemi's not going to, Kemi won't be able to supplant him. However, but that's one thing Farage has to not do. He shouldn't just sit on his laurels and go, "Oh well, I've gone as far right as I need to be." and so I don't have to go any further. No.
No. So totally agree. Totally agree, Mitch. Farage has got to be more proactive and a bit more right wing than he has been. I think he's been a bit cowardly, to be honest, of late. I think he's been a bit cowardly of late, but yeah, totally agree with that. Can I just say, I've seen some things in the chat. I've seen people asking about tattoos. Someone's mentioned a Boyd massacre. I don't know what that is, but maybe some of you guys do. I would just say, guys, if you have a particular question you really want answered, if you look at the top of the chat, there is a pinned entropy link, and you can send us a super chat. And at the end of the stream, we will answer any super chat questions we get. So if you've got a question like about tattoos or whatever it might be, and you really want an answer, send us a super chat and we'll answer it. Hitman, did you have a first subject for this evening?
Well, I guess we might as well, as I mentioned, talk about the Southport revelations that have come out.
Good. Wanted to do that.
Yeah, so essentially, in case you're not aware, it turns out the government lied to us, and when the police had searched the Southport murderer, Axel, whatever his name, they found a Quran and ricin, which is a chemical weapon, in his house, and he's actually been convicted under the Terrorism Act. And
very deadly chemical weapon, by the way, but yes.
Yes, and so essentially, obviously the police and the government knew this weeks ago, and yet they still locked all those rioters up who were concerned about, Islamic violence and terrorism. Well, they've been proven right, and obviously, as we mentioned last week, that poor Peter Lynch fellow killed himself. So it's really sick, isn't it?
Yep, it really is, because basically they lied to the public.
And
at the time, during the so-called British riots, which were caused, let us remind people, by the murder of 3 tiny little toddler girls, and the wounding and attempted murder of many others, by this second generation immigrant who they tried to pretend was a Welshman. Many people were suggesting this was Islamic terrorism, and lo and behold, all the evidence we have so far is that it may have been Islamic terrorism. So we were just lied to, and all these people were given years in jail for really minor offences that wouldn't have even gotten probation in normal times by two-tier care Starmer. And this is the terrible position that Britain finds itself in today, ruled by the Labour Party and two-tier care, who is, he's a very nasty, very left-wing socialist.
And I think, as Morgoth pointed out, if we had a sensible, country, something like this would cause Starmer to resign out of shame. But he's not going to do that now, is he?
No. I mean, it's like all these rumours that have been floating around Starmer for quite a while about there is something not right about his family and all this kind of stuff. We keep hearing these rumours, but we never actually get to the truth of it.
There's an interesting take as well on this. I think it was AM who said that all of this was deliberately leaked to undermine Starmer in the face of that Trump might come in, because obviously Trump wants to go to war. Well, not literally go to war, but he's determined to not fuck around with Starmer ultimately for the whole. Oh, we're going to let our activists come over and campaign for your opposition, essentially.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Starmer's been trying to interfere in the US election by backing Kamala Harris.
Well, one thing I would say, though, is that when he went to meet Biden over Ukraine, he met with Trump and not Harris. So I'm having to actually wonder is whether the whole Labour activist going over is not some just rogue elements within the Labour Party.
That's possible. That's certainly possible.
And again, it's just another instance, perhaps, of people trying to undermine Starmer.
Maybe. I wouldn't trust Starmer as far as I could throw him with the little finger of my left hand, but I mean, I would just like Miami Virtue is saying use of possession of Al Qaeda manual will be recycled ideologically as consistent with Sam Melia possessing copies of Oswald Mosley books. Well, you know what? I've read some Oswald Mosley because I'm interested in history. And Oswald Mosley was not a terrorist. He never killed any people in Britain. He never suggested anyone should kill any people in Britain. And he never published a manual of terrorism. He never did. So I don't know how they possibly can do that, to be honest.
I mean, if anything, Iron Duke, he encouraged us not to get involved in a major war, which would have led to the deaths of more people. So
yeah, he did. I mean, he was not in favour of like giving Poland the big red war button for Britain, which led directly to World War II. He was against that. That would have saved hundreds of thousands of people.
Iron Duke, not to go full Adam Curtis here, but of course, in one of the me and Hitman, one of the previous shows on his channel, we actually looked at something quite similar to that, and actually the foundations of Al Qaeda. And the reality is, it wasn't like an organized group that it was sold to us in that way. Now, I believe that he was motivated by multiple factors. Probably it is very likely that he was Islamist. Remember that guy who ran over those people on that Westminster Bridge?
Hang on, AI, you've got to be very careful what you say about this, because they will try and say that it could have an influence on the trial. All right, so you've got to be very careful how you phrase it.
I won't talk about what's going on at the moment. Then I will talk about what happened before with that person who was shot dead by police when he when he drove across Westminster Bridge. Now, he was from I believe a Christian background. He was African. He converted to Islam. So stuff like that has happened before in this country. And I think it just goes. The ultimate thing was it was known about by people in the regime. And if you remember, the night towards the end of that series of disturbances and protests and such, there was this massive demo organized by the Socialist Workers' parties, all the allies of the establishment and the regime, and the Labour Party, and all the newspapers as well. We talked about it on this show. Were united in condemning the mythical far right insurgents.
Yep.
And the reason they did this massive demo is that the media were hyping up that there was this massive far right demo that was going to take place across the country in multiple cities, in multiple areas, which is complete nonsense. And it was just I think it was just made up on the hook, but it was all done to distract from probably what the truth of the matter was, that as everyone had been saying, and that there was the motive was what a lot of people thought it was, and the media, of course, this was nothing to do with the usual suspects, and the recent information has really put that in doubt. So,
and of course, the government knew about this the same day this bloke was arrested, so they just lied to the public, and they made sure that the mainstream media also lied to the public.
And to add on to that, obviously, AI, you've alluded to there that this is not the first time this has happened. Well, if you all remember back 11 years ago when you had the murder of the British soldier Lee Rigby, one of the people who murdered him, stabbed him to death in the street, was a African immigrant who was Christian who converted to Islam.
Yeah. Which, of course, it's very common. Like, Islam is making huge strides in lots of Africa at the moment. So it's very common for Africans to go from some sort of African Christian to Islamist. It's very common. Someone in the chat asked who Sam Melia is. Sam Melia was given 2 years for putting up stickers saying things like it's okay to be white. He's a political prisoner, just as much as the Peter guy was, who sadly killed himself in prison after the grandfather who killed himself in prison after being given 2 years for almost nothing during the riots. He's just another British political prisoner. Britain has far more political prisoners these days than Putin's Russia does. Far more.
Yeah, I think there's that stat. It's something like the amount of arrests for social media posts. It's like the UK is like 3 times the amount you have in Russia, and Russia's got more than double the population.
Well, it's about Russia's got about 3 or 4 times the population. But yeah, exactly.
It's funny you said that, Andrew. I was actually watching, I know it's a bit off topic, but it does relate to Russia in some regard. I was watching a documentary. I think it was a document. It was an interview with George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, and he was. This was just like a thing, and they were talking about films made in the Soviet Union, and when he was making films in America. From the 70s up until near 90s, early 2000s. And he was asked, about the freedom. And he was like, well, actually, the Soviets were quite free to make films and quite decent films. They just couldn't criticize the Politburo or the government of the day. But they could make films on, any particular subject matter. Even ones which were, showed the Russian monarchy in some positive light. So, I mean, the one example is War and Peace. Things like that, which was made in the Soviet Union. There was quite a few of those sorts of genres created. And he was saying that when he was making films, the reason he never got involved with Hollywood is he was jealous because he knew Soviet filmmakers who had that freedom, but then suddenly, you had in political interest groups in Hollywood that was telling him, oh, you can't mention this, or no, you can't put that in because that could ruin, this could cause financial problems here. So, in some ways, there's always that's always been the case, maybe. And we just haven't noticed.
This is a good segue. I'll ask Mitch about this because Mitch knows quite a lot about Russian films and so on. Mitch, what's your take on this subject that Hitman brought up?
Yeah, something like it's often said that Russia's over totalitarian society and go, okay, I mean, you can find Russian pop stars or whatever who are very critical of Putin, and Putin
Pussy Riot, the feminist punk band.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, they've been out of Russia for the past 10 years now. Because at Sochi, they had to get whipped by the Cossacks because they just kept being a nuisance for the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say, one side bit on that, and this was something I noticed at the time, and I thought oh, they kind of deserved it. Was they did break into an Orthodox church and did basically sacrilegious things, and it's not like they the Cossacks stormed a concert that they were at. They deliberately went and put themselves in public spaces to do this sort of stuff and offend and commit criminal acts. So it's not like the Cossacks were just these wandering heathens that sort of pounced on them, which the media like to make it out to be. But sorry, can you carry on, Mitch?
Yeah, so that pussy vibe. I mean, yeah, they've pretty much been chucked out of Russia a long time ago. But you can get all these Russian shit-libby pop stars who slag off Putin non-stop, call him a criminal, blah blah blah. They don't get arrested. The only time when you do get arrested in Russia is if you're actually political opposition. Let's say Navalny, for example, Navalny is also probably a dodgy character anyway, so no Russian wept for him getting imprisoned and eventually dying in prison.
Oh, I remember that guy. Yeah, I remember that guy. And if I'd have been a Russian, I wouldn't have supported him. So yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, it's for example, his daughter spends her time shagging half of university mates in California. So that's what Navalny. So whenever Navalny does like a fundraiser, it goes over to his crypto account, and of course Russians ever since like the 90s, they don't particularly trust financial stuff they don't fully understand. So when we come across someone like Navalny having a personal crypto account that is not very transparent about, of course they're going to be very suspicious. And it turns out what he was doing was he was just literally pocketing wealth and literally just funneling money to help his children just get university in America, where they just became even more shit libby, like the parts of a BLM, blah 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 blah. So that's kind of like what Navalny's side of
and Mitch, what's your thoughts on the cover up about what was really going on in Southport?
It's going to be one of the things. I mean, some people have said that, oh, he's going to be like Rotherham, and I go, I don't. I mean, Rotherham's still looked upon in the same, almost like a war crime amongst, like, I mean, if you mention Rotherham in a random conversation among, let's say, blokes in the pub, you start talking about immigration, whatever. Yeah, they'll just think Rotherham as in the grooming gangs, so or red gangs as the proper wording should be. So that there's no lack of infamy. So, I mean, the thing about Keir Starmer that makes it egregious with him is just the guy, he's just a vicious idiot. There's nothing about him that's endearing, but there's also the fact that he's that much of an idiot, he's going to unravel the previous state success that our state apparatus has been for the past 200 years in containing dissent. Like, he's just a complete idiot. He's just declaring won all the wrong groups at the wrong time. Like farmers now. He's now declared war on the farmers.
And of course, it's worth mentioning that the guy who I believe committed suicide in prison, the 61-year-old grandfather who was given 2 years for next to nothing.
Well, he shouted at a police officer. Well, that's what he did. He shouted.
Yeah, 2 years in jail for shouting at a police officer. Yeah, all right. And he came from Rotherham, so he was probably particularly sensitive to the sort of thing he was protesting against.
Yeah, the guy's egregious to his system because he doesn't like little girls getting victimized by the brain preds. So yeah, he had to go.
Yeah, it's obviously evil to be against the killing of very small little British girls.
Yeah, and it's I think like AA said it best. Like, I mean, it's a riot, but it's true. But like everything Starmer does, it doesn't matter what good Starmer could do between now and the next election. The fact is, he's marked now as a traitor. Like, no one will look good on him. His legacy will always be just his name being a dirty name, akin to like it's like how in Norway, for example, the name Quisling is a part of a traitor.
Yep,
that's basically what Starmer's going to become in the years to come.
Totally agree. Does anyone else have anything else on this particular subject?
Not particularly. No.
AI, did you have a first subject for this week?
Well, I was going to. Let's just think.
I presume someone's going to bring up the attack on British farmers at some point. But
yeah, actually, I'll do the farmer story because that's quite important for me locally. It's what's gone on there. So basically, yeah, going from Starmer, he's the government is effectively turning their declaration of war on the kulaks, the British kulaks, and this is part of a trend that we've seen in Europe. I think the reason why this is done is basically to make us dependent on global financial and economic networks, so we can't be self-sufficient, and it's a one way of attacking national sovereignty and what have you in that regard. And one of that way is to basically force majority of farms, particularly small family farms, out of business. I mean, they're all the bureaucracy that they have to deal with now is ridiculous, and the cost of it is the actual financial cost of bureaucracy. And if you watch Clarkson's Farm, I think one thing that's good about Clarkson's Farm is it does show the amount of money that it costs for farmers. Even, I mean, for example, having a herd of sheep, it is actually not very financially profitable at all. It really isn't. Compared to like dairy or things like maybe growing rapeseed. I mean, one thing that is, you see a lot of farms today. You go around, especially small farms, you'll see a lot of rapeseed being grown in fields, and that's
Yeah,
because
that's been the case for quite a while now, and it's getting worse and worse. Yeah, I've noticed that.
yeah, and so that's one side of it. And yeah, and then because of the new Labour policy, it would basically make it financially impossible for current farmers to hand their farms down to their children anyway. I mean, it's difficult already as it is. It's just made it impossible now. And this has been seen by many farmers as an attack on the countryside and the farming community. There are demonstrations planned. I think what could be a good way, and maybe, if I don't know if anyone from Homeland will be listening to this, or Reform even, or whoever, but if you wanted to use like to actually do something that would be important, is actually organizing, because the farmers will do their stuff on the streets, but we also need to be thinking of ways of, on a local, maybe a council level. And I know both Reform and Homeland are looking at council seats, and there's got elections coming up next year, um, of a way to unite and get the farming, whether it's through the Countryside Alliance or the Farmers Union, or whatever, to get to basically create like a bloc, a united front, um, against them. Because the trouble is, while the protesting will have an effect, but people forget it did nearly bring down. I remember the farmers' protests against Blair, and it did really bring nearly brought down the Blair government in some ways, because it actually created like this situation where there was total blockage on roads, and it just got to the point where that it would force the government change, force their hands.
You or anyone else on the panel can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's a big protest, a farmers' protest planned for London on the 19th of November, is it?
Yeah, that's correct. There's a big protest planned.
That's going to be the most
Yeah.
white people London has seen in a long time. But yeah.
Oh, you're not going to see any Iranian monarchist flags or Israeli flags there, no.
I think there'll be crosses of St George and Union Jacks, and maybe some Welsh flags and stuff like that, and maybe Scottish flags even. But I fully support the farmers. The farmers are being attacked in the whole Western world. I mean, we all remember the big problems that the farmers in the Netherlands had a couple of years ago. We've seen the same thing in Australia. We've seen the same thing in America. The globalists and the lefty liberals have a huge hatred for farmers, and particularly, as I said, family farmers. They really hate these people.
Yeah,
And
it's oh, sorry.
Yeah, the Green parties especially, it's because it's ironic, isn't it? The party is supposed to be all for the environment and green things. So no, we hate farmers. We want to liquidate them as well. We just want the whole. There's a meme that gets shared, and it's just like they want to turn a farm. They want to get rid of the windmill and replace it with like a one of those horrific like wind turbines.
Yeah, and you can go around under any of those wind turbine things. I mean, first of all, of course, they're absolute eyesores wherever they put them, but also they require huge amounts of special products that come from the third world. They're very, very expensive, and they only produce any electricity at all when it's windy, which it isn't all the time. But you can also go around under those wind farms and just look at all the dead birds. They kill tens and tens of thousands of birds every single year.
Yeah, it's like the average farm, because I mean, it's like what the average farm is something like 217 acres in this country. So that's like what that. So in other words, in terms of the assets they have, and this is one thing the average Labour spot. I mean, Twitter's full of these retards who don't understand how assets work and how land works, basically. So they think that because a farmer might be sitting on, let's say, £2.3 million worth of land, that must mean they've got like spare 400 grand in the bank or something. No, it doesn't work that way. The land, it's like
that's not how cash flow works. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's like, for example, a farmer. Okay, he can have, let's say, a week's worth of really heavy rain, and that ruins his crop. So that's his economic productivity severely hampered. Just for instance. So that's one. A second thing is so like, for example, the average farmer owns a farm of, let's say, 217 acres, which, and you keep bearing in mind the average acre of land in this country is 10.5 grand. So that's like 2.3 million pounds worth of land. Now, under this, it's what Starmer's doing. He's going, the first million is exempt, but for upwards of $1 million is taxable. So in other words, so 1.3 million. Okay, then we say, inheritance tax is 50% of his usual rate. So the usual rate, of course, 40%. So it's actually going to be at 20%. So 20% of 1.3 million, that gets you 260 grand. So you imagine, let's say you're this eldest child of your father who owns a farm, and he's going to die soon or die in the next 5 years. As soon as he dies, you get levied a £260,000 tax bill just for inheriting the farm. Of course, you can't inherit it because your farm. But I mean, farmers aren't known for making profit, because if anyone knows anything about interactions with, let's say, supermarkets regarding like selling produce to them, supermarkets are stingy bastards with the money. So
very much so. Yeah, very much so. They control the amount that a farmer can earn, for sure. Yeah.
So yeah, farmers barely make enough. Like, they make enough to keep the lights on and so on, but they're not actually swimming in it like that. I live in rural Staffordshire. We've got quite a few farmers. Yeah. So I mean, there's a pub. It's not my local, but I mean, I could go to. But yeah, I might actually go to this one pub now when where the farmers go. And I imagine if I were to step in there, just have a pint, I'll just see. I'll just hear loads of farmers. I don't know. I wouldn't say fed posting, but they're going to be very angry, shall we say?
But I mean, why would you want to destroy a family farm that's been in the family for maybe 100 or maybe even 150 years, which is basically what Starmer and Labour are going to do?
I mean, I think it comes back. I think the most obvious one is they genuinely hate the people of this country. The countryside, even today, with some exceptions, is largely English. In England, at least, it's largely English. It's one of the last vestiges. I mean, it's the last vestiges, but even now, it's been taken over in some degree, and this is a way of he's taken the Starmer's gone after the last vestiges of Old England and the House of Lords by getting rid of the hereditary peers, and now he's doing it with the farming, which is I mean, the foundations of any people in Europe has been sort of the farming aspect of it, and yeah, that's what they're coming after now.
Well, look, you know AI. I'm very much into my history, and the yeomen of England. The English longbow archers in the 100 Years' War and all that stuff. Those guys, they came from the small farmers of England. That's who they were. The yeomen of England. That was those guys.
Oh yeah, I mean, going back to our talk on Anglo-Saxon England. I mean, from archaeological evidence, when the Angles and the Saxons and the Jutes arrived, one of the first things they did was to start cultivating the land, and you had these various farms, and because they were largely barter economies for a while. They didn't have a financial system like on the continent. So what was it? Each farm had to give to the king, the ruler. What was it, like, one cow, a couple of pigs, certain
Uh-huh.
amount of beer, that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it's always been present. It's always been important. There was a place somewhere in Wiltshire that was named after I remember, like, Peter or something like that. This was like a rage bait thing, and it wasn't a real thing. It was just rage bait. But that American Peter, the animal rights group, um,
Yep.
tried to change wanted to change the name, or have a consultation of changing the name of a village, because it was called um Wool something or other, after like sheep's wool, or something like that. And they're talking about the Anglo-Saxon origin of it being, the of where it dates to, that it was like a shepherd community and all that sort of stuff.
And
So
and the original wealth of England, the money that allowed England to, say, fight the 100 Years' War, came from the wool industry.
yeah.
It was wool farming that was England's original wealth, was wool farming.
Yes, because Friedrich List talks about that in the National System of Political Economy. It's essentially the first national industry that allowed England to build some form of wealth, really.
100% Hitman, 100%. But like I say, these small farmers, they're the descendants of the yeomen of England, who are the group that kind of made England, really, if you ask me, historically. They were the same guys who formed the English archers in the 100 Years' War. That was who they were, the yeomen of England. In fact, I did a stream on the Yeomen of England that was exactly talking about that, and how during the 100 Years' War they repeatedly beat the French, even though France was actually a much bigger and richer country than England was. So yeah, look, I'm 100% behind the farmers. I saw some lefty moron on Twitter who made a post earlier in the week, who said something like, "Oh, if all the English farms go, we'll just buy our food from Europe." It's just, these people are so dumb. It's unbelievable.
I know, and the thing is, Iron Duke, someone may correct me, but didn't the farmers largely support Brexit? Because I have to wonder if this is not
Yes, they
just
did.
some punishment for. Yeah, this is the punishment for them for supporting Brexit. Oh, you're going to foil our globalist plans? Well, we're going to fuck you over then.
Yeah. And of course, food comes from supermarkets. It doesn't come from farms. I mean, I did a post on Twitter last week that pointed out that there was a time when Rhodesia was one of the bread baskets of Africa, because the Rhodesian white farmers produced so much surplus. And of course, Robert Mugabe came in, a commie, and destroyed the white farmers in Rhodesia. And very shortly, Zimbabwe became a nation full of malnutrition amongst little black kids, because the white farmers had been destroyed. That's what happened. And we're also in a situation in Britain where we absolutely, even now, depend on food imports. If you destroy your farming industry, we're going to become even more dependent on imports. And we have a Royal Navy these days, which is not far from being the biggest navy in the world, as it traditionally always was. We've got 16 destroyers and frigates these days. So good luck with 16 destroyers and frigates trying to defend convoys of food coming into Britain if there's ever a war. Good luck with that, with 16 destroyers and frigates.
Well, the thing is that The problem is that with the agriculture we have, we only produce about half our food ourselves, and that is still done by only like the 1% of the population that are actually employed in agriculture. So I mean, if we actually, increase that a bit, we could probably be self-sufficient on food and not even have to worry about importing it. But no, we can't have that. We've got to destroy all our farmland and have it renovated into, giant concrete slabs for the million mammalians they want to bring in.
Or covered in wind farms or solar panels, which in Britain will only work about 15% of the time. Yeah, great idea. It's so sensible. It's really good. It's insanity. It really is insanity.
When
And,
I was, I
yeah.
was going to say, when I was working with the Leave campaign, many years ago now, back in 2016, yeah, it would be in 2016, as a volunteer, I do remember a lot of the people that used to come in and, people that were, when we were out and about, especially really was largely farmers, to the previous point, and that was one myth that was really interesting because there was a myth that actually all the farmers were dead against leaving the EU. In reality, it was the like the industry farming, the big superstructure ones that are, largely produce like battery farmed products and stuff. So, and those are the people who will benefit from this. And you'll probably see, I mean, if there isn't like a U-turn on this, what's going to happen with the land? It'll be purchased up by, well, friends of the Labour Party.
100%. Count Duck Egg is suggesting many people can't make basic meals like leg of chocolate pot or shepherd's pie. Well, I can make those. And I do make those. But yeah, I don't know why people can't, especially like if you don't have a recipe these days, it's pretty easy to go on the internet and find one. So, but yeah, fair enough.
I mean, I made a shepherd's pie the other week. I mean, it's not that hard. And I can't help but think, Duke, it's just a lot of people are lazy. And so they just go, well, let's just buy something off Uber Eats or Deliveroo or whatever. And because you got to consume the slop,
Look, I'd also say this: like you see a lot of people, particularly on the left, mainly because they want to say how wonderful all the diverse food that we have these days is, who turn around and say, they slug off British food all the time. If you make British food with fresh ingredients, British food is as good as anyone else's. I'm sorry, it just is. I mean, leaving aside classics like bacon and eggs for breakfast and what have you, there's a lot of really good British food out there, not least roast beef, I might add, with Yorkshire pudding and what have you. But we constantly get lefties trying to tell us, oh, foreign slop's great, but British food is really terrible. This is just not true. It's a myth. If you make British food with fresh ingredients and you don't overcook it, it's as good as anyone else's food.
Does anyone remember the slop wars from last year, where I think it was AA and Sargon against like the bloody degenerate third world hordes trying to say Mexican food was better? It was like, honestly.
Yeah, but you know what? I can make tacos. I don't need a Mexican to make me tacos. I can make them if I want to once in a while, and I do once in a while. It's like my grandfather served in India in between the wars in the British Army, and he made great curries. They were very hot, but they were good curries. Didn't need to be an Indian.
No, because I mean, funnily enough, speaking of Mexican food, I did actually make a chili for the first time the other week, and that was quite nice. And I think if you make a chili with fresh ingredients and you've got good hygiene standards, then it's fine. But I would never buy one from one of these bloody takeaway things. You probably get food poisoning.
Yeah. It's like the million kebab houses in Britain these days. I wouldn't go to most of those places, I've got to say.
the ever increasing quality and diversity of and range of restaurants, as Millennial Woes likes to say.
It's just pathetic. You don't need the people to make those recipes, Duke Valentino's asking me what I think of Irish dishes. I like Irish stew. That's nice. Make that quite frequently.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with any Irish dishes.
Well, I know Irish stew, and there's quite a few Irish potato dishes which are pretty good. Because I've got to admit that my mum was born in Southern Ireland, but although her dad was Welsh, but she was born in Southern Ireland. But yeah, there's plenty of good Irish food. No problem with that.
But for some reason, they struggle to fish.
Well, in some places there is Irish fishing in some places, to be fair, but it's not as widespread as it used to be in Britain. No. But yeah, guys, anything else to say on this particular subject?
I mean, I put on Twitter, with response of one guy saying, "Well, that's all right. We'll just import we'll destroy the farms and import abroad." And I just put like a meme up of Agamemnon from Troy, saying there, then every son of Troy shall die. It's like every British libtard, shall starve to death, and that's where I'm at sort of mentally. Like, I wouldn't, if there was like a famine. I mean, it obviously affect everyone, but if it was like a famine affecting cities, I wouldn't like shed a tear.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm seeing people in the chat talking about game meat. When I used to live in England, I used to eat pheasant.
Oh yeah,
a couple of times a year, I suppose. I used to eat venison occasionally. Yeah, absolutely. You can get those in England. It's not that difficult.
I remember having it was a game pie in a pub in Devon, and I remember spitting. I remember biting down. There was something like really hard, and I spat it out, and it was like fragments of like metal, and it was shot.
Yeah,
made
for
its
sure.
way into the pub.
You'll get
into
that.
the
Yeah,
pipe.
if people don't clean it properly, you'll definitely get that for sure. But I mean, I've eaten game in South Africa quite frequently, like antelope of various sorts. I had crocodile once, which is kind of like fishy chicken, basically. Wasn't that impressed, but it's all right. In Australia, I eat kangaroo occasionally. That's okay. Which is very much like venison. But yeah, I'm not against people eating venison or game. That's fine. People should do that too. And you can get it in Britain. If you don't support your farmers, you will run out of food. And one of the things I would say that is worth saying about this story is the globalists and the lefty liberals. Part of the reason, yes, I've had biltong many times, can't count duck egg in South Africa, and it's very nice, by the way, very savoury, but and quite tough if it's proper biltong. But anyway, I would just say that one of the reasons the globalists and the lefty liberals are against farmers is they want to destroy the meat industry, because they want us eating the insects and all the other slop that people like Bill Gates, etc., want us to eat. This is definitely part of it. There's no doubt of that whatsoever. Don't want us eating roast beef or bacon and eggs. They want us eating, eat the bugs, this kind of stuff. I definitely think that's part of it.
Yes, we've got to eat the boogs, as they like to say.
Yep, 100%. I used to think it was a bit of a joke, but it's not. We've seen this in the Netherlands, for example, with their huge push against farmers, you know.
And well, the thing is with the whole bugs thing is they've, I think, been covertly doing that for a lot longer. Because, for example, there's a kind of red food colouring that's made from cochineal beetles. That's been in like food, like a lot of frozen meals for a very long time. So they're just boiling the frog. They're slowly upping how much they're trying to sneak in. Ultimately,
100%, totally agree.
By the way, I sent you something via Twitter. If you just want to pull that up because it's relevant.
Okay, I'll go and check it. Wait 1 second. If you guys want to keep chatting so there's no dead air, I'll go and check.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's just something I posted on Twitter quite a while ago, and it's a small extract from the National System of Political Economy because it's basically lists talking about the mindset of merchants and how they just through their worldview they just sort of destroy the wealth of the country.
I've actually noticed, Hitman. I've been thinking about it. The merchant, the behavior, and particularly, after our recent stream. And one thing that I've sort of come to realize, and I no doubt others have noticed this, but the merchant cannot conceive of national prestige, like actually investing something which it isn't about financial gain or output or any of these metrics, but actually having something which provides national prestige. And the reason why I was thinking about it is I saw when I was in Bristol recently, there was like these posters for this play at the Hippodrome, and it was like a Chinese play, and it basically like financed by the Chinese state, and it was all it was everywhere, it was being promoted, and it was just something I was thinking about, that they are able to project when they say soft power, I mean basically our soft power isn't real, it's just us crying to the Americans when we want something done. But this is like real soft power, using like the culture and even elements of high culture to get to get like sort of like a cheer of national prestige. And this is something that I've just been noticed, that this is something the merchant in our country, whenever it's ever attempted on the national level. I mean, I think Roger Scruton, when he tried to go in the Cameron government, this was something, I don't know if it was something directly he was thinking about, but this was something he was alluding to, and it was one of the reasons why I believe he was sort of attacked by their lackeys and everything, and removed from a government body position. But yeah, it's just something that I've noticed, that that's something we lost completely. We don't have, there is nothing of like national prestige anymore.
No, certainly not.
Very true. Very true. I'm not quite sure how I can show the thing you sent me.
Well, if you do present at the bottom, you should then be able to click the tab where you've got it open.
Okay, let me see if I can do this. Boomer tech, eh?
Steve, there's a fair amount of fish farming. I don't know, but I mean, I remember one time while I was on the holiday games over in a caravan park earlier this year, back in August, and you have to have a bloody license to go fishing. And I'm thinking to myself, bearing in mind, like, the word English comes from the Angles, right? The Angles of Schleswig-Holstein, like the Angles as a tribe were named so by Tacitus because we were known for our angling fishing technique. It's like, it's the most basic activity that we're known for. You have to get a license nowadays. So it's like,
Well,
so
yeah, you've needed a fishing license in Britain for quite a long time.
yeah, but it's stupid in principle.
To be fair, you've needed a fishing license. Oh yeah, no, I don't disagree with you, Mitch. I'm just saying it's been around for quite a long time.
Oh, I thought it was about Blair. I didn't think it was like something happened before Blair.
No, I remember. Like, I used to go fishing in rivers and stuff when I was like a young boy, and you still needed a fishing license even then, but it wasn't very expensive.
No, it
Well,
costs
you-
like 50 quid nowadays, doesn't it?
Oh yeah,
Well-
it wasn't that. It was a couple of quid, or 150 or something like that. Yeah, it wasn't a lot.
Well, you seem to don't need one if you're Indian, because I remember there was a clip the other week, and it was this Canadian guy finding this like group of Indians just picking a load of fish out of like a river, and like there was actually like a forbidden sign saying like no taking the fish, and he was like, "Hey, you're not supposed to do that," and they just ignored him and kept trying to take the fish.
Oh yeah, well that happens all the damn time. But yeah, it was like in America when they had those Haitians going to local duck ponds and just killing all the ducks and geese that the parents used to take their kids down to feed. Just no clue, no clue.
I remember in our down by one of rivers we have here. I remember this was years ago when the Tamils first arrived. They would like bathe and wash their like clothes in the river. I mean, it was just
Oh no!
yeah, and yeah, that was something that used to get that went on, and it it's just I think. I mean, I think that sort of woke me up a bit, in some ways, like red pilling in IRL. But
Yeah, it's like
I mean,
getting devastated. It's like getting devastated about Indians. I think it's Prince Edward Island, literally defecating on a beach. That kind of woke him up a bit. And
Yeah.
I think it's like I've seen, like, I don't know if you saw that Canadian woman who was basically like, she just some Indian bloke was harassing her, going, "Why don't you like me? Why don't you like me?" And the Canadian woman was just telling pretty much to fuck off. And it's like, well, I don't know. So I think it's going to become a point where Canada literally just becomes quote unquote racist overnight, just because of Indians coming over. Just because they're that one immigrant caste group who you just look at them and you go, yeah. You do look at it and you go, well, I can't think of a word in the English language that you can easily sum up to describe these people.
Its civilization is incommunicable, basically. Right?
Yes, 100% I can choke.
You can't explain your civilization to people who are not of it. Hitman, look, mate, I can't open that, but if you want to put it up in the same way that Mitch did with his thing earlier, then I can put it on the screen.
What, I just share my own screen?
Yeah, you just share it and I'll put it up, because I can't work out how to do it because I'm far too vermitech, I have to say.
Oh, one moment. Okay. Hang on. Okay.
Okay. Yep. I can have that. There you go.
Okay, yeah, so this is a small snippet from the National System of Political Economy, and this is just Friedrich List shredding the merchant mindset. So then, if those who have been reduced to want bread seek to escape the misery in their fatherland by immigrating, he can still obtain profit by the business of arranging their emigration. In the time of war, he provides the enemy with arms and ammunition. He would, if it were possible, to sell fields and meadows to foreign countries. When he has sold the last bit of land, he would place himself on board a ship and export himself.
100%. Yep, totally agree.
Yeah, again, the merchant can only understand exchange and commerce. They don't understand actually producing physical goods, and that's the basis of wealth. No, we just have to have this endless, exchange of produce, and that's great, guys, right?
Yeah. And I mean, also, they don't understand that some things are more important than economics. There are things that are more important than economics, and there are things that are more important than line go up. I put a tweet out on Twitter last week, which was Michael Caine saying why he supported Brexit. And Michael Caine said, I supported Brexit because I'd sooner be a poor master than a rich servant. And yeah, totally agree.
based Michael Caine.
Yeah, totally
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. What I mean, I know like that. I know like that's one thing that's because you see on Instagram, TikTok, and the Twitter, just anywhere, anyone on social media, you'll see the average shithouse going, oh, like the other bollock of farmers going, oh well, you voted for Brexit, therefore you can't complain about the inheritance tax coming for you, like blah blah blah. I'm thinking, I mean. But I remember, like, amidst Brexit, there were like these like big farmers complaining, "Oh no, because of Brexit, I can't hire cheap Romanian labour or whatever." And that's not even big farmers; the small farmers. From what I understood, it was basically they just wanted deregulation because basically the CAP, Common Agricultural Policy, basically shafted the farmers. I can't remember how precisely, but
Yeah, so
yeah,
in like a good example is we went to Lincolnshire, and I actually went. This was well before Brexit. I remember going through during the harvest season. So this was like September, October, towards the end of September, October time, and because of the EU rules, you had like this is like complete mental, where vegetables had to be a certain shape and certain size, right? And I know many leftists used to say, "Oh, this was like Daily Mail bullshit," that was being put out there, but it actually wasn't. There was the truth to this, that there was like a quota to package. It was due to packaging, right? It had to be all fitting neatly in the packaging, like on a really autistic level. And what you had is in the reams or in the ditches around these fields, mountains of rejected cabbages, of carrots, of anything you can think of during the harvest, because a good portion they just chucked to be left rotting in the fields or rotting in these ditches. Um, and I remember when we went down there and I saw it for the first time. It was completely insane, and you had these foreign labourers working in the fields, and again, the argument at the time that you would have heard was, well, no, none of the British people want to do it. That isn't true, because there were locals in these villages around Lincolnshire who used to get offered but these were mega farms. These were mega farms, um, and they didn't even bother approaching locals because they knew that they wouldn't pay um, them a decent bit, and they could. I mean, they would allegedly say that these big mega farms would be in leagues with human traffickers from Europe to get basically slaves to do it. I don't know how true that is. But it wouldn't surprise me. I'll put it that way.
I'll tell
But
you
I
this,
mean,
though. In the 1980s, when I was a teenager, I once worked on a British farm in West Sussex for a week, and we were picking potatoes for the most part. And you had to fill this huge crate, which was about 6 foot by 6 foot by 6 foot, roughly. And you got £5 when you filled one. And at the end of the week, I could barely stand up. And I was 18 back then. Like I was 18 or 17, 18, something like that. I was a young teenager and very fit. And you got £5 when you filled up something that was 6 foot by 6 foot by 6 foot. That's a lot of potatoes, mate. And you were just rubbing them out of the ground with your hands. And at the end of the week, I couldn't stand for about 2 days. I'm not joking.
yeah, I remember. I think I did when I was about 14. I did strawberry and gooseberry picking, and because we had to go on your knees, hands and knees. I remember my knees were like red raw, like scabbing and everything because of just like
See, you couldn't do that with the potatoes. You had to stand up, but you had to
yeah.
bend double, and it was like
Well, you see,
wow,
with the
that
strawberries
was
and
hard work.
gooseberries, because it was like a bush, you had to sort of get on your hands and knees and like reach underneath to get the right ones and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, I'm trying to remember. I think I used to do about 2.5 of those in a day. And I only did it because I was taking a chick out at the end of the week. That was the only reason I did it. I needed some extra cash. So
Yeah, fair
that was
enough.
hard. That was hard work.
Yeah, I mean, today I don't know what it was like when you, but I mean, I know like again at that time that when you had those foreign, people from the continent, and a lot of them, were either Eastern European or from further afield outside the EU. Like in the Balkans and stuff. At the time when the countries weren't part of the EU, um, you they would be like on a like a timing system. They would
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
be timed, and if they were too slow by like a second or something, they'd be like booted out. So it was.
But there's
But
also always
yeah,
been a difference between the small family farms, which is the ones we're mainly talking about this evening in regard to the huge taxation that two-tier care is putting on them. There's always been a difference between those and the big estate farms, which were, often owned by corporations and people like that.
yeah,
And
and
it was
and
those
friends
guys
of
that, and it was those guys that were mainly employing these East Europeans and so on. Like your
yeah.
family farms, you have the family working on them, and maybe like one farm labourer, you know.
I mean, these big estate farms, and we have them where I am. But these big estate farms are largely the people who manage them or the people who are involved with them are largely either the supporters of the Labour Party. A lot of them are
Yep.
supporters of the Labour Party. They're members of the Labour Party. They have their own little interests. Some of them, I mean, there's one who you know Evis, the one that organises Glastonbury. He was a Labour candidate. I
Yep.
know that he sort of like presents himself as like the small country farm. He isn't that. It is like a huge industry farming farm he's got out there now, and they do multiple things. And I get it. A lot of like local farmers, they like to branch out and do different stuff. I get it, but at the same time, what they end up doing, these big industry farms, is they go out of their way to destroy farming in general. Um,
Mm.
I mean, there was one. I won't name them directly, but there was one in Devon who were big into the tourist bit. They can like convert old parts of their barns and property for tourism, and it resulted that they ended up becoming like these insufferable remainers, really, really bad. And they were happy that the neighboring farms around them would continue to be suppressed with the quota system, and also nearby fishing. Largely it was the fishing as well, which was the worst affected, because they like in one case they'll be paid to actually like sink their own boats.
Yeah.
Um,
Crazy.
and they were ostracized. That particular farm was completely ostracized, and they deserved it. Quite frankly, the behavior that they demonstrated, they deserved it.
Yeah.
Because they turned their back on their community. And the thing there is that there does need to be a huge social cost for when you turn your back on your people and your community, and that's something that this country has lost. And in many ways, when they abolished the death penalty for treason, it is sort of normalized, treason on a micro level as well against your community.
Fair
It,
enough.
it it's
Totally agree.
normalized. It's this normalized this disgusting behavior that is acceptable and
Yeah,
happens
no,
daily.
no, I agree with you. I've just got to say, because I see people in the chat talking about black pudding. Black pudding is really nice and is a necessary thing with bacon and eggs. It's very nice. I
It's
like it a lot.
Black pudding is amazing. I'm not a big fan of white pudding. Not gonna lie. I've tried it. It's okay. I'm
Yeah,
not crazy about it. I black pudding is better. Is the best.
yeah. Black pudding is nice. It's savory. It's nice. I like it. No bacon and eggs breakfast is complete without black pudding, I'm afraid. But there we go.
Yes, I'm partial to that, though. I've not had it in a very long time.
Yeah, I only get it occasionally because I'm in Australia and they do sell it here, but it's much harder to get than it is in Britain. But yeah, no, I like black pudding. I think it's an essential part of a bacon and eggs breakfast, alongside baked beans and tomatoes and maybe this is my own thing. I like a chorizo sausage as well with my bacon and eggs, but that's
Oh, interesting.
But that's Spanish, of course. But you know, whatever.
I've witnessed people at like these cafes when they have a cooked breakfast have like avocado with their like slice of avocado with their cooked breakfast.
Yeah, I don't do that. I like avocado. I don't mind avocado, but I don't have it with my cooked English breakfast. No.
No, I don't. It doesn't work for me. I think it's it's a poor choice to to have with it.
I used to do fried bread. I don't these days. These days, I tend to just do cheese on toast and put that on with the baked beans and egg on top of it. You know, but yeah, depends how hungry I am, of course.
Yeah.
Oh my God, pineapple on an English
Oh
bread.
no,
That sounds really wrong. That sounds wrong. It really does.
I mean, that's more wrong than pineapple and pizza.
That sounds like domestic terrorism right there. I don't condone that.
Yeah,
Pineapple.
Yeah. I mean, you ought to get flogged in a town square for espousing that, man.
You should be convicted of treason for doing that.
The closest you go to fruit on an English breakfast is tomato.
I mean, what retard would do that?
Oh, I'm sure there are people who would, but I mean, I don't even like pineapple on pizza. If I'm going to eat pizza, I have black olives and I have anchovies on any pizza I eat, but I certainly don't have pineapple.
Probably the Gary Pickles fella off Twitter who said about buying European food. So,
oh yeah, he'd probably do that. There's no more black pudding. Well, I might as well have my my sort of Latin American pineapple.
I don't mind pineapple, but it's a dessert. I mean, you have it with like custard and stuff.
Oh, but we're being asked now about East Asian cuisine. Well, I've never had Vietnamese street Valentino, but I am quite partial to Thai food, especially homemade Thai food.
Yeah, Thai's okay. Yeah, I make very hot curries. I do because I'm using my grandfather's recipe. They're very hot, but
I like. I mean, I'm not. I don't like sushi. I don't like the Vietnamese stuff. I don't like. I'm very sort of picky when it comes to the Far East sort of stuff. It just doesn't really work with me. I'm okay with like, I guess like sweet and sour and rice and what have you. But apart from that, I'm not. I'm not a big fan.
I have to say I don't mind sushi. Sushi's okay, and I like pork ramen from Japan. That's nice. If you make it with actual pork, that's pretty good.
I've seen sushi bars like in cities and stuff, and I kind of I've avoided going into places like that because I feel like a bit of a wanker if I did go in there. Do you get my meaning? Like,
yeah, they always seemed a bit hipsterish to me. So
yeah, if I went in there, I think I'd have to pull a Mishima like I've got here, just jump out on the stand and decry the death of the English cuisine and then sort of ram a sword into myself and.
All right, guys, I'm gonna put this question up because I think this is a good one. What are our thoughts on veganism? I would say completely beyond the pale, but you guys can have your say.
Okay. I can relate to this a bit because I've actually got relatives who are vegan. Well, sort of. So, unfortunately, my father bought into a lot of the whole. He read this book a few years ago called "How Not to Die," and it's by this propagandist American doctor. And yeah, he's kind of a vegan, kind of pescatarian. He eats fish, but he doesn't really eat meat anymore because he believes it's all poison. So, here's my view. I think if some people choose it for ethical reasons, and I'm like, that's fine, but it's not really nutritionally good for you because obviously raw egg nationalists have talked about this, but there are so many people who are vegans who are like completely like dysgenic looking, unfortunately, and they don't look healthy.
Yeah. I mean, again, I've known a few people who've, you who are vegans. I've never contemplated it myself because I'm a meat eater. I'm not into that sort of stuff. Um, I mean, I would say one thing I've noticed by a few vegans is they have there was one, that was it, who her skin went quite yellow. It went quite yellow, and that was something which was signals like malnutrition.
Mm.
Um, and I know if you're vegan, you can probably get a decent balance and of diet into you, but a lot of them, because they're not all health experts, they can't, can they? Um, so I I think it I think it can cause more harm than good, personally. Um, and I think there's also the practice. It's just a practical thing to it, that if it was like in an emergency, like say you were like in a you know stuck in the wilds of Alaska or somewhere like that, or Canada, you'd have to you'd have to survive on what's there, not like be too picky about it. But
Yeah, I think on some level it actually kind of shows how our society has kind of become so detached from like basic essential survival instincts because as you said, if you're in the middle of nowhere and all you've got to eat is a deer you have to hunt down, then you have to eat the meat or you're going to starve. Where now, because people have got so many different things available that they can order or buy from the supermarket, it's like, oh, I don't need to eat meat anymore. So it's almost like a kind of like I almost see it as like a luxury, like middle class lifestyle, ultimately, in a way.
well, it's kind
It's
of
very
like
right on.
it's kind of like
It's
post.
very lefty as well, to be
It
honest.
it's kind of like post. I was going to say it's like it is like a post society sort of construct in my ways, because you're sort of, yeah, it's a layer. You're removing the essential layer of the human experience, which is basically like the most natural part, which is hunting and gathering food. I mean, one of the things that I do remember was I was in York for a film festival, and I went in with some friends, and we just happened to be there at the time. And this is, years and years ago. But I remember going in, and there was like this documentary of like this Russian Siberian remote village. One of those, like, I think it had like the old believers, which was separate from the mainline orthodoxy. um and there was this clip, and whoever filmed the documentary just showed like this farmer sort of dragging this pig, this really really fat pig, out of this barn to tie it to its leg to a post. He then pulled out a knife and then just on camera slit its throat and let
Yeah,
it
yeah,
bleed out and everything. And the amount of people, not just women, but men, who cried in the audience, who were disgusted. Some of them grabbed,
women I can understand. Women I
but
can understand.
there was a lot of men.
Women are supposed to be
I mean, actually crying.
kind,
I mean, I might feel a little bit squeamish, but I wouldn't cry.
There was a couple there who had, like, I remember they were taking off their glasses, like, on the same row as me, and they were like crying because they were.
Oh my
I
god!
I wasn't. At first, I
crazy.
thought, is it like, because it was like an arty sort of stuff, and it was like, no, they were crying because of like there was like some melancholy music over the top of all this, and I was like, oh. they're crying because they did what they did.
I tell you what, AI, I've got to say that if I was going to do that, I'd probably shoot it, right, in the head,
Yeah,
rather than cut its throat. I'm not really because if you look at ritual sacrifice that is now allowed in Britain and never used to be. And you can talk about halal, and you can also talk about kosher. I'm an equal opportunity, all these people should fuck off person. I do believe in humane killing of animals. I do, and the most humane way to kill an animal is a shot in the head, or maybe a bolt gun or whatever. It's not cutting its throat. I would say that.
yeah. I mean, the bolt in the head. I would say though, I think. I mean, the reason he did it, I don't know if it was like because they wanted to have the meat I know that if you cut the throat, the meat
Yeah, but you can
is a
do
bit
that
more.
after listen. I used to shoot. Look, I'm not a hunter, all right? I'm not. It's not something I enjoy, okay? But I have shot antelope, and the reason I did so was I was expected to for the men in my company. They expected fresh meat, not just rat packs. So, yeah, I went and did it. I can't say I particularly enjoyed it. I don't really like killing defenseless animals, but you can shoot that animal, and then the way you drain it is going to have a lot of effect on what it's going to taste like. And I always got given some of the meat, of course, because I shot the damn thing. But yeah, it's not. It's not as important as certain groups, shall we say,
Yeah.
try and claim.
I mean, I don't believe these Russian old believers there was any I think it was just because the like if you saw their village, it was basically like medieval wooden. It was kind of like, just it was that level
Yeah,
of
in
remote.
medieval times, I can absolutely say that's fine. Because
Yeah,
how else were they going to kill the animal?
Yeah,
But,
the whole point of
yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say the whole point of Russian old believers is they have to live separately from civilization, because that's all. Because I think that documentary. I think I might know what is it about, like an old family that had to flee into Siberia back in the 1930s due to Soviet persecution or something. I think I watched that one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there was one done by Vice where they fled. That was it. They fled Stalin in the 30s, and they found out it was something ridiculous it was like in the early 2000s that the Soviet Union actually collapsed and Stalin had been dead for decades at that point. And they still thought like Stalin was alive, the Soviet Union was still going, and they had no knowledge of what had happened in the rest of the world. That's how sort of remote and cut off they were.
Yeah, so if you look,
Can I
if you
just
look up,
say, sorry to interrupt you, Mitch. Can I just say one thing in the chat to Aubrey Alley, who I would like to realize this? You need to go and look up English mustard. It will blow your head off. Go try it.
Oh, and horseradish as well.
Horseradish. Yeah, I like horseradish with beef. That's nice. But yeah, they've been talking about mustard in the chat. And English mustard is the hottest mustard you can buy. Go try it. I love it. It's great on sausages, beef, that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, another thing I couldn't be asked with is when you get some people like shitting on English cheese, for example. That's one culinary thing I couldn't, especially from a bloody French of all people. Like,
there's some nice English cheese. Yes, there is.
I've always had time for nice English cheddar, but I could not eat a French camembert or other French cheese. I can't remember names, but
I quite like some French cheeses like Camembert and what have you.
Yeah,
and
same.
Brie.
Same.
Yeah,
I like those, but there's also many good English cheeses.
Yeah, but it's just French cheese. It just feels too. I don't know what the word would be. It's like too creamy. Like I prefer because English cheddar's more solid.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, the French cheeses are quite creamy. The English are much more solid.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I do agree with that. But like I said, good fresh English food, well cooked and not overcooked, is as good as any other food in the world. This nonsense about English food is no good. It's just rubbish. It really is.
Yeah, it's. I mean, a lot of it's Americans who think themselves like the edgiest people on the planet because they love to shit on us, basically. Like it's kind of like because it's like you have on one hand you have some magatards who are taking the mick out of France back in the last election, but then you also get Reddit tier people in America who just like think that well, England is ultimately the bad guy because we have the biggest empire, therefore we should always be shat upon on everything.
There's a bit of that. Yeah, they do still rely a bit on their War of Independence that they only won because the French, Spanish, and Dutch backed them. Otherwise,
that's what
certainly wouldn't have. But
that's what offended me most when because you had the French election where pretty much they fortified the system against Marine Le Pen, and you have all these Americans like Cassandra MacDonald and a few others like her, like Magatard right, just having an anti-French crusade. Mom were going, "Oh, French people are subhumans," blah blah blah. I thought to myself, like, if anything, the French are one of the main reasons why America exists. So, if anything, the Americans should be loyal and actually stick up for the French, especially when, as he said, the French system fortified itself against Marine Le Pen because of
well, like I said, like I've often said, I know some good Americans. Not all Americans are like that, and if you went on the British mainstream media and the British politicians, you would think Britain was one of the most wank places in the entire universe, frankly. But fortunately, we all know many real British people who are not. And I think to some degree, the same thing applies in America, to be honest. But that's just me.
I mean, if you look at the media that Americans consume that depict the UK,
always raining. Every single American show about Britain, if it shows Britain, it's raining. It's almost always fucking London. But
and also if you notice, there's literally there is no English people. If you actually look at it like your average show, there is no English people. You have like your Welsh, Scots, and Irish and stuff like that.
Yep.
And there was one they would like there was like a show that was like in a small that depicted like an English village, and you had like English women, a few English women. You had like blacks and browns, and you had the Celts and everything. But you didn't. There was like no English men. And then when the English men were there, they were like either gay or like massive cucks. So.
Or evil redcoats. The Englishmen are often evil redcoats. And I was an evil redcoat, so there you go. Well, whatever.
I mean, I joke. When I watch Patriot, I'm cheering on Harrington. I'm cheering him on.
100%.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
I mean, I've just totally avoided that film because I just know how subversive it is. So.
Yeah, I've never watched all of it. I've got to say, I've watched bits of it, but I've never watched all of it. But then I've never watched all of that Scottish fantasy film that the guy made.
Braveheart.
I have seen Braveheart, and that is just as bad.
Never watched all that.
One thing that's fulfilling as Englishmen is I just go into like reaction like videos or like Braveheart and just going, I love Longshanks. Like you just say,
he was a good guy.
Yeah, it's like, and every comment would just be like Americans just having a go at me, going, because they just think that Edward Longshanks is exactly as portrayed in the film. It's like, well, I was reading Mark Marcy's book about Edward Longshanks this week, and he was basically just confirmed what I already knew, which was he was one of the greatest kings we ever had. So, anytime an American or Scotsman or whomever else just spends their time whinging about Edward Longshanks, I literally just let rip.
I mean, let's be honest. Edward the First, Edward, or Edward the First being the Plantagenet, Longshanks. I mean, they were both like what the kids say, goated. They were
Yeah.
like particularly Edward the First. I mean, for obvious reasons. So we'll move on.
Yeah, there's a
I mean,
reason why. There's a reason why. There's that video of Edward Longshanks chucking a homosexual guy out his window, and he gets 7.5 million views.
And don't forget, Edward Longshanks also inspired one of the most based TV characters of all time, which is Tywin Lannister from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I even that show, which is that film, Outlaw King, which I have watched, and it's okay. It's a few iffy in places. There's like a bit progressive bollocks, but it isn't like it doesn't ruin it. It doesn't ruin like the feeling of it. Because it's mainly just like battles and fighting, and it does depict the Scottish in a more accurate manner than Braveheart. And
Which is
even
not
then,
very difficult, but yes.
no, it's not very difficult. Well, no, but basically, they're not like these like Pictish heathen tribesmen. They're actually gentlemen, knights, and everything, and it depicts them in that sort of manner, which is like, well, yeah, that's how they were. And even Edward then is like, well. Even Longshanks then there's this scene where there's at the siege of Stirling Castle, and he's like, "Come on, everyone!" He stops them all eating. He's like, "Come on, I paid a fucking king's ransom for this trebuchet. We're going to use it now." So,
Yeah, it's like I remember like this is one thing that the Scottish nationalists don't like mentioning. So because one thing about Scotland at that time was the three main families that were laying claim to the throne were the Bruces, Balliols, and Florences, all of whom were of Anglo-Norman stock, and because the Scottish nobility was so split on who should be king, there were like Scottish nobles who just said we want Longshanks to be our king, so they pretty much wanted like Anglo-Scottish union, like 400 years before it actually happened with the Stuarts. And Scottish nationalists get really cross when you mention that little factoid. But the only reason why Robert the Bruce became the King of Scotland was because he had Edward II. He was just it wasn't as bad as depicted in Braveheart, but he was quite a terrible king, and that's why Robert the Bruce. But even then, I mean, as I said, Robert the Bruce. I mean, his family were originally Normans, I believe, like invited by David first.
Well, I can only say I lived in Stirling on and off for about 18 months, and it's a nice town.
Wasn't Robert the Bruce? He was somewhat friendly with Longshanks and the Plantagenet family as a whole, like before the rebellions and wars.
He was actually one of he was originally a liege of them, but then he backed out of that because of Scottish politics.
Yeah, did they go on crusades? Did they go on a crusade?
I don't know if they did, but he was certainly a liege of the English king at one stage, and then he backed out of it for Scottish political reasons.
Edward I was actually on crusade when his father died, and so was actually returned from it when he was coronated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. Maybe I'm thinking of a different Bruce family member then, because I remember reading somewhere that the Bruces and went on crusades with the English Plantagenets and other English nobility, and that was sort of how you had these close bonds. But yeah,
and it's yeah. I forgot what I was going to say, but you also have Edward I. Right? Apparently, because people know about Henry V at that time when he got an arrowhead lodged 6 inches deep into his face at Shrewsbury.
Yeah.
And then there's Edward I. So you got what's his name, Baybars or some old Baybars, whatever his name was, Sultan of Egypt at the time, tried to kill Longshanks with a poisoned dagger through an assassin, and basically, I think one of his knights had to suck the poison out of his wound, because originally his wife wanted to do it, Eleanor of Castile, but then one of his knights did it, and he didn't die of it. So
what a lucky man. Okay.
Was Mitch? Was that the same? Was that the same Edward? Was because I believe Richard the Lionheart was also attacked by an assassin.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
In his bed. Was it in his
Yep.
bedchamber or something
And,
like that?
he fought them off. He fought them off.
Yes.
Well, the Order of Assassins did try to kill him and Saladin, and both of them failed.
Yeah, what was it? It was a branch of Shia Islam, wasn't it?
Yes, the Order of Assassins. The Order of Assassins.
Yeah.
The Order of Assassins are. It's literally a set within a set within the set. They are Nizari, Ismaili, Shia Islamists. Yeah.
Yeah. And
they were expert assassins, and that's what they did basically. But yeah, the Lionheart fought them off because he was a damn good soldier. So yeah.
Yeah.
Right, I've got one. Unless anyone else has anything else they want to bring up, if you do, bring it up now.
Are you going to bring up the poppy stuff?
I am going to bring up the Royal British Legion and the poppy. And first of all, I have to make a disclaimer, because someone on the Worcester Club slagged me off about this and said I should have moaned about this two or 3 years ago. I buy most of my poppies these days from the Australian Returned Servicemen's League, which is the RSL, which is popularly called the Rissole in Australia. And there's when I go drinking with my ex-military mates, we generally go to a Rissole because the beer prices are lower. And in Australia, that's where you get your poppies from. And as far as I know, the Australian Returned Servicemen's League has not given donations to puberty blocking charities like Stonewall, who are basically child abusers as far as I'm concerned. The Royal British Legion has. The Royal British Legion gave £10,000 to the puberty blocking child abuse charity Stonewall. Don't know why, but they did. And they also spent about £70,000 employing a diversity manager. Again, I don't know why they did. And I made a couple of posts last week on Twitter, which featured some Commonwealth war grave cemeteries with their thousands and thousands and thousands of graves from World War I mostly, but also from World War II. And I asked and got no reply. Did the Royal British Legion think all those men died for child abuse? And I got no reply. What a surprise, you know. Also, the Royal British Legion this year apparently are selling poppies with rainbows on, you know, in case you want to support LGBTQ, however many other letters they want to add to it. I'd actually charge them money to even have them. If I was in Britain this 11th of November or before 11th of November, I would not be giving the Royal British Legion money. I absolutely support my fellow veterans and their families, but not LGBTQ shit, and certainly not children under the age of 16 being given puberty blockers. I don't support that. It's an amazement to me that the Royal British Legion does, because I can't believe most of their members support it at all. It disgusts, guys. Please discuss.
Well, it's just another sign of institutional capture, and you're right, Angie. We shouldn't give them money because you don't give money to people who hate you. Basically, you're just funding your own destruction.
Unfortunately, a week ago, I did give like £1. This was before I was made aware of what happened, so that was a massive regret. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's. Do you know what's really like, and it's really rattled me today, and yeah, it's. I always remember when I get annoyed or frustrated or aggressive when thinking about it. I have to sort of remind myself, like ride the tiger, just calm it, cool it, sort of step over it. But when you have this, when you have the likes of Cleverly saying pale, stale, just these sort of attacks, it's disgusting to think, the what these people are doing. It really is it's just fucking evil what they're doing. And when we win, they have to pay for there has to be some sort of retribution for what they've done.
100%.
There has to be a retribution, and I don't mean that like in a Fed posted way. I mean like generally the Nuremberg style trials with and these people's names should be known in history. When films are made of them or TV shows, they'll be like these Indiana Jones style villains. These will be like the villains of tomorrow.
Yep.
That's what needs to happen with these people.
Yep.
They need to be turned into complete villains, because what they've done is they are spiritually and morally raping this country continuously. It's fucking awful.
I just know that my grandfather and my dad, who were both British soldiers, would have like exploded to hear the Royal British Legion was giving money to something like Stonewall, which they, like me, would have regarded as a child abuse charity. I'm sorry, they just would have exploded. It's just insane to me that they can get away with this. Your average ex-British soldier or sailor or airman doesn't support that shit at all.
But also, like if you think about the recent veterans from Afghanistan,
exactly, even those guys would not support this.
I know two. One of them who has had to have severe medical help because they had severe, problems, but with child abuse, because they were ordered to stand by while while Afghan National Army and Afghan police were given carte blanche to sexually, to kidnap and abuse young boys.
Yep.
Afghanistan.
I've heard this from recent veterans in Afghanistan myself, mate. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. They complained to their senior officer, and the senior officer said, "No, we're not allowed to do anything about that."
Yeah. It basically, too bad. We have to. I think one of them told me they were told it's too bad. We're here to help them govern, not not anything else. And it's kind of like, I mean, it's mad. It's beyond belief, but that we could help these savages, that we could help these monsters. I mean,
Yep.
I'm not even of the view that it's a different culture. No, these people are monsters. They are fucking evil monsters. I'm totally like Tolkien pilled, on the orcs. No, there's no nuance about them. I don't care about the plight of their village.
I totally agree with you.
They're just fucking monsters. They're evil. They're monsters. I don't want to know them. They come here. They can go back again. They're just evil.
Yep, I totally agree. And let us remember there are so-called Afghan refugees in Britain who go home to Afghanistan on holiday. That's how much they're really refugees,
Yeah.
But don't forget that they send all the money they earn here overseas as well. They send it all.
Absolutely. Hitman, what's your take on the Royal British Legion giving money to a pro-LGBTQ charity that abuses under 16-year-old children? What's your take on that?
Well, it's wrong, it's evil, but I can't say I'm surprised, because so many other charities have done the same thing. They're so eager to just virtue signal as in fact, I think that's an understatement. 10 years ago, it would have been virtue signaling. Today, they gleefully do it because they think they're morally virtuous in doing so.
But I mean, if you're a good patriotic Briton who wants to support the wounded veterans of the British Armed Forces and also their families of the widows and orphans and all the rest of it, how can you do that when the Royal British Legion, which used to be this, totally British organization, is now backing this shit?
All I could say was try to organize some counter group for veterans and make sure it's run by people you trust and it's not going to be subverted, and just to donate that way, I guess.
Yep. Totally agree. Mitch, your view?
I don't really have much to say about this other than general disgust. No, I just don't. Well, I mean, everyone's got a military familial past with the past 2 world wars at the very least.
Yeah,
and
100.
I mean, I don't know where I'm going to get poppy from, because I mean, the Royal British Legion is the main one. It's like, for example, when I was at school, you'd generally be expected to pay £1 because a couple of students would be tasked with going into classrooms and just fundraising for the RBO. Well, where do we go from there?
Yep, totally agree, mate. Totally agree. It's like it's one of the most disgusting things I have heard recently. And like I said, the guys from World War I and World War II would be throwing up if they could see this today. They would literally be vomiting, because that was not what they were fighting for. It wasn't, not one tiny bit. And as I said, I do honestly believe that even more recent veterans don't believe in this shit. I really don't think they do. The Royal British Legion wants its head felt. It really does. It's betraying the people it is supposed to be looking after. That's what I think they're doing. I got one more thing to say before we close, or rather before I ask you guys if you've got anything you want to plug. And that is this. A lot of people have been suggesting on X, on Twitter, that veterans should turn their backs on two-tier Keir Starmer on the 11th, on Armistice Day. And I totally support that. I really, really think that any patriotic British veteran should turn their back on that scumbag traitor to Britain, two-tier Keir Starmer. I don't know whether you guys will agree with me, but that's what I think.
No, I agree completely.
Yeah, he shows not contempt, but disgust and hatred of not even William the Conqueror could have shown that same level of hatred to the English. And I know maybe Mitch may not. I don't know. Maybe Mitch would agree with that assessment.
I agree.
But not even William the Conqueror showed that much hatred and disgust to the English. Bearing in mind what he did to most of Northern England, in Yorkshire. And yeah, I absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't know why you think we disagree.
No, I didn't think you disagree. I just wanted you to say it, guys, because I think I have a fairly based view of England and Britain, and I think most patriotic English and British people would agree with me. I didn't think you disagreed, not for a minute.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't. That's why I didn't really particularly verse on this subject. So I'm thinking, well, we're all going to agree with one another, so it just felt like an echo chamber, just like confirming each other's worldview.
The reason I wanted to bring it up, Mitch, is because I wanted to point it out to people, because it's not been widely publicized, because of course the mainstream media are never going to publicize that,
Yeah.
That's the reason I wanted to bring it up. I mean, I hope people watch this show. AI's on here twice now, I think. AI, you're here twice. Okay. I think people will watch this stream because we don't do. Hang on, AI's gone. We don't do the mainstream media tricks, and we try and tell the truth. That's why I wanted to bring it up, and I'm just really, really disappointed that the Roberts Legion have gone down this route. It's just disgusting to me, to be honest.
I'm just going to answer Aubrey and Chabert Culloden. More redcoats died in a TV series representation of a battle than the actual battle itself. So,
that is absolutely true. That's true, and I can tell you, Aubrey Alley, I've actually been to the battlefield of Culloden, so I've been there. It's quite an interesting place to go visit. Very beautiful, by the way, where it is.
It depends on. Well, it depends if you. It depends on beautiful for whom. I mean, if you're the Duke of Cumberland and the Redcoats, it was beautiful. Except unless you were one of those dumb Scotsmen charging through the swamp. I believe it was. It's like a swamp or bog or something.
Yeah, there was a bit of a bog. Yeah, there was. It's also worth remembering, Mitch, that there were a lot of Scots on the English side. Like all the Lowland Scots and some of the Highlanders were on the English side, which of course is almost never mentioned.
Yeah,
while the Highlanders had a French unit.
Yeah, it's like what was it? Glencoe Massacre. Was it 1693, 1694?
Yeah,
the Glencoe was in the aftermath of the Glorious Revolution, so 1688, 1689.
Yeah, I've been there too. Another very pretty place, but not happy. Yeah. But that was one Highland clan slaughtering another Highland clan. Had nothing to do with the English.
It was the Campbells and the McDonalds. And to be fair, and this isn't me justifying the actions of the Campbells, but the McDonald clan were known for stealing horses and cattle in the Highlands. They were known as a clan that were basically thieves and brigands, and there is argument from one particular side that they somewhat brought it on themselves. That, though, I would say maybe the massacre of in the Glencoe was overboard.
Well, I think one element of it you got to remember is one of the circumstances that because after the revolution happened, the king's officials in Scotland wanted all the clans to declare fealty to the new monarchs and William and Mary, and there was like some deadline, and the MacDonalds were like a day past the deadline giving their fealty, and the Campbells used that as an excuse to massacre them to prove their allegiance against these supposed traitors. So there's that also angle as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, wasn't that the justification in the Scottish Parliament hearing afterwards when there was like an investigation, because the argument was, they were about to rebel. There was about to be like a Jacobite rebellion or something like along those lines.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah. Though I mean, it probably was. I can't, because I believe there was an English captain or an English officer there, and I think who wasn't part of the clan network, and they left the field because they weren't in favour of what was going down that night.
Well, I can tell you that Aubrey Alley gets most of her stuff on this period of history from that crappy romance stuff Outlander, which I watched about 2/3 of the first episode and thought this is going to be really crap, and I've never watched any more since then. So there you go. But as I have told Aubrey Alley in the past, because she's in my Discord, like I would have been one of the redcoats shooting and bayoneting the Highlanders, but
yeah, it's the only good reason to watch stuff like that is just to watch us being based, basically. Like, just watch us like killing off our main heroes or whatever.
I think I'm right in saying General Wolfe fought at the Battle of Culloden. Hitman will tell me if I'm right. I'm pretty sure I am.
Sorry, I'm not familiar with General Wolfe. Sorry.
The guy who took the Heights of Abraham in Canada from the French. I'm pretty sure his first major action was at Culloden. I'm pretty sure that's true.
I actually don't know that. Sorry.
I think he was at. I'm just trying to think.
I'm almost certain he was at Culloden.
I think he was. He may have been at the Battle of Killiecrankie.
Yeah, he was at Culloden, mate. I'm almost certain of it. I'll look it up after the stream, but I'm pretty certain he was. I think that was his first general action, like a big battle.
Yeah, it says he was an aide-de-camp to a guy called Henry Hawley. Who fought under Cumberland.
Thank you, Mitch. I thought he was. I don't usually get my British military history wrong. But anyway, so there's that. But reality, you know what? The Highlanders slaughtered the English at a couple of battles before that. So, it was just a mutual slaughter thing. That's kind of war, Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But, yeah.
Well, when you go and look up our wars between us and the Scottish, it's more like 80% of the battles we win. And, yeah. I mean, with the exception of Loudon Hill and Bannockburn, I can't think of many Scottish battles the Scots won, especially when we invade us. Because what?
But there was also a lot of constant low-level skirmishing with the border reavers and all this kind of stuff going on. But both sides won battles, both sides lost battles. I mean, this is just how warfare goes, really.
Yeah, it's like, for example, you look at the Battle of Verneuil in 1424, where the Scottish were on the right flank. There were like 5,000 of them, I think there was, so they were the main force holding the right flank. The French abandoned them and literally just slaughtered all of them because...
What a surprise.
Yeah, basically the whole thing was, so we did an agreement with Scotland at the time that said, look, no more Scotsmen will die, should be sent to France to help the French against us. These 5,000 Scotsmen, however, under the command of John Stewart, bearing in mind the Stuarts were a bit aloof from central Scotland, under King James I of Scotland. So 5,000 Scotsmen, they were all just butchered to a man because we could understand, let's say, the French peasants fighting us because at the end of it, it's their homeland, and we can also understand to some extent the Milanese mercenaries fighting also about because they're doing it for money. But the Scotsmen fighting, we just slaughtered them all to a man because we just thought, we just thought now mercy, now quarter.
We'd had enough by that stage. Yeah. Duke Valentino says Culloden prisoners were not executed. Yeah, some of them were. They weren't all executed by any means. Most of the ones who were executed were not rank and file. They were a bit higher up.
I mean, there is also noting that because this was during the winter, I believe, and what was it during the massacre? Many of them fled into the Glen Cone, to the upper heights where you had the worst of the storm. So some of them that died weren't actually killed by Campbells or other redcoats. They were just succumbed to the elements.
One of the things you have to realize about Culloden, which I kind of briefly mentioned, but I'll say it again, is that the lowland Scots were almost all on the English side. So all the Scots around Edinburgh and Glasgow and what have you, they were almost all on the English side, and so were some of the Highland clans. A minority of them, but some. And so the lowland Scots were the guys who actually wanted all these guys butchered more than the English did, to be honest. But you're not allowed to say that because these days your Scottish nationalists want to pretend all the Scots were always Highlanders, which is not true at all. most Lowland Scots were Calvinists. They were not Catholics, which most of the Highland clans at the time of Culloden were. So, that's got a quite big, it's got quite a lot to do with it, shall we say, which you're not allowed to talk about because you can't say there were two sorts of Scots, because there were.
The only one that I remember, and it was a very low budget TV film from the 80s, I believe, and it had Brian Blessed in it, and I think it was called Kidnapped.
Hang on, that was based on a Sir Walter Scott thing, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I'm sure that's based on Sir Walter Scott book, which is actually pretty good, by the way.
Yeah, it was something to do with that was Culloden as well. I'm just trying to think. I can't remember the story. I think it's a boy he's kid. He goes from being like part of Bonnie Prince Charles's like army, and then he gets kidnapped, and he sort of then goes into the British Army at Culloden or something like that. That I can't remember it too well, but yeah, that I remember that depicted the clan, the separation between the Lowland Scots and the clans, because a lot of the clans, particularly the Catholics from like the Western Isles, were still speaking in that Gaelic language. They weren't actually speaking English.
This is true. Yeah, this is true. Okay. Anything you would like to promote, Mitch? Hello? Mitch, is there anything you would like to promote? You're muted at the moment, mate. All right, I'll move on. Hitman, is there anything you would like to promote?
Well, there's my channel, which I have a weekly show called the Archival Discourses. There will not be an episode next week due to the US election, but the week after, I should be having you on, Iron Duke, and we're going to be looking at the legacy of the Great War, so that should be interesting.
Yeah, I look forward to that, mate. I'm always very happy to do a historical stream. Hitman has an excellent channel. He has AI on as a guest fairly often. Yeah, good subjects. Well worth following is Hitman's channel. AI, anything you would like to promote, mate?
I was planning on doing a stream, just like watching the election results live. Little lore fact of this channel, but 4 years ago, nearly 4 years ago now to the day, I did a live stream. I think Don was live streaming. I think Staff Sergeant Sniper was going between our streams at the time, and we I remember because we sort of caught the way that tabulated votes coming in live, that they were being fortified, and it was kind of like really funny because it was obvious. And so yeah, I remember that particular stream we were watching, suddenly like a lot of the counting centers stop in like those keys, like in Georgia and the Rust Belt and everywhere, and these votes just coming in dumps, and that sort of got Biden over the line in those states. And so yeah, I was going to do a election stream. I think me and everybody else on the in our spheres. So but yeah, if anyone wants to hop on throughout the night, early hours of the morning, let me know.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I might come and do that. Maybe Aubrey out there, you might come and do that with you as an American lady.
Yeah, if Aubrey is up doing that, that would be great. Great to have an
I don't
American.
know if Tim Wilms is going to be doing a stream for that. But if he does, I can go on that and on yours. But yeah, probably a good idea. I remember the last US presidential election. I was watching until about 1 a.m. and Trump was vastly ahead. I went to bed. When I woke up, all of a sudden Biden had won, which was very strange, but there you go. Most popular president in American electoral history. Very strange, if you ask me, but yeah, that's just me. Mitch, did you have anything you wanted to promote, mate? I think we've lost Mitch.
I don't really
there
have
he is.
plug.
Not your Twitter or anything like that?
No, I mean, the only thing I'm going to... the only thing I recommend... I'm still yet to fully watch J.D. Vance's time on Rogan. Plus, also, there's also John Fetterman. So we got John Fetterman on Rogan before we have Kamala Harris. Which I don't think we're going to get Kamala Harris on Joe Rogan. Which, what are we up now, suppose?
I've just got a stated Duke Valentino in the chat that the Trump assassination attempt was not a staged Hollywood production, because there is no way you could hit someone's ear on purpose. It's like, from that distance, it's speaking as a former soldier who was a pretty good shot. You can't do that, mate, honestly. It wasn't staged. I don't believe that for 1 second. But anyway, carry on, Mitch. Big one.
Plus, there's that fireman, the Campatore, I think his name was. What was his Campatore? Who died?
Yep.
Got killed shielding his.
Yeah, there was the family man fireman who was murdered by the dude. There was another guy or girl who was wounded. It wasn't a fix. You can't do a fix like that. I'm sorry. I just don't believe it for one tiny second. And I'm not unopen to the occasional conspiracy theory, but that one's one too far for me.
I mean, and to be fair, it's a conspiracy that serves our enemies far too much. So, no, it happens.
Yeah. And you've had two of them, but they've been trying to kill Trump for a long time, The Democrats, or whoever is behind Biden and Harris, who certainly don't run things themselves because one's senile and the other one's dumb. They've been trying to kill Trump for a long time. I mean, do they want Trump? I've heard this stuff. I know AA comes out with it sometimes. They want Trump to win this time. Do they? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Why would they want Trump to win? Because how many assassination attempts have been on him now? Including that Nafal Tard, who's turned out to be a paedophile.
Yeah, you're talking about like at least 3 so far that have been uncovered.
I think the difference this time is Trump has allies in, he's actually got like allies beyond his like personal and business remit. You got a lot of like you got the Silicon Valley people who are on his side effectively. Jeff Bezos.
Well, you've got Elon Musk on his side.
Yeah,
that's sure.
Which is like the ultimate thing. That's something he didn't have in 2016 or 2020. But apart from that, I do think a lot of Democrats have, because I think a lot of them have, maybe they've come to the idea that, okay, let him have like his 4 terms now, because after next 4 years, he's done. He can't be the president, and he won't be a leading figure in the Republican Party.
But Vance can.
Yeah, Vance can, but I think that, to be honest, the only Democrat who's been like out with doing Kamala Harris has been Obama, and wife and or husband, depending how you view it.
Yes.
But like, none of the other Democrats have been out. It's not like Gavin Newsom or a Kennedy, or I mean, there have been Kennedys out, but not for Harris.
Well,
Trump.
RFK is backing Trump.
He's
Trump's
backing
going to
Trump.
give him a position in his cabinet, as far as I can work out.
I mean, I personally, I'm going to call it now. I think Trump probably will win, and I've been making predictions. The more outlandish prediction I made was that he's going to like flip a few states which are not in the running. That people aren't really.
Yes, we were tweeting each other, AI. Yes, I think he could possibly win some of the light blue states like Virginia or Minnesota, but you've got him winning New Jersey, which is that is a little bit outlandish. I mean, I'd love it if he did win New Jersey, but I don't think it will happen.
I'm going to call
guys,
it now.
Guys, can I
that
ask
he's going to
you,
win
Sonny,
New Jersey.
Guys, can I ask you, Sonny Jim, who is a long-time friend of the channel, says Trump wants out of Ukraine, which the neocons now want, which I think is partly true, but will blame on him for it failing. What's your view on that, guys?
That's something I've thought for a long time, and it's one of the reasons why it's actually beneficial for Trump to come back in, because they can now blame him for, Trump sold out Ukraine to, Putin, who's his puppet master.
And of course, to be honest to the audience, like Ukraine could never win this war, and anyone who has paid any attention to it over the last 6 months can see that they've almost lost now. They're very close to losing now. There's going to be a disaster in Ukraine sooner rather than later. It's going to be all right, they're going to last out beyond the election, but that's about it.
I'm going to be honest with you, Andrew. I actually don't think neocons want out of Ukraine. I think they've been given no choice, because I think if you look at like the techno globalist and the people who were like the NGO Tony Blair types, they want out of Ukraine. A lot of those in the American system. The neocons don't.
Well, it's obviously a losing war now. Like it's obviously losing war. No doubt about that whatsoever.
But the trouble is, and going back to what Hitman with our channel on the neocons on the episode we looked at the neocons, they're not as powerful as the most powerful I think the neocons got in America was probably the days and weeks and months after 9/11. That was like their peak power in the US.
Bush Jr.'s first term.
Yeah, Bush Jr.'s first term, and since then, like today, they're not as influential. There are different networks within the elites. People like Silicon Valley who weren't really players at the time, like Jeff Bezos, people like that. I think even Vanguard, the people over at Vanguard and stuff were talking about leaving Ukraine. So I think neocons have been dragged kicking and screaming over this. They're sort of doing it begrudgingly. But if you've noticed, every single neocon of the Bush era, I think is all back. They're all backing Harris. None of them are backing any or Trump or the Republicans.
100%. You're so correct, AI. Yep, yeah, 100%. I don't see any neocon backing Trump. This is why I don't believe the cathedral or whatever you want to call the deep state wants Trump to win. I don't think they do. I don't believe that.
Yeah, I mean, with the whole idea of like them wanting to go, yeah, you got the tech bros, for example. I think Endeavor tweeted about this, where he said like the tech bros like Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, even, and as well as the Musk, their starting with like the DEI initiatives are going to screw over the kind of innovation and the human capital they need for their businesses to live on. So
yeah, you can't catch rockets like Musk is doing. And like I like Musk's space stuff. I don't like his human engineering stuff at all. But I like his space stuff. I'd like to see us do more of that. But you can't catch rockets with DEI. You just can't. You don't get the right people.
Yeah, I just don't see how. I mean, there are sections of the elites who want Trump in, but there's no doubt about that. But there's also a lot because you got the progressive, gay-based comments like Kamala Harris types who. Every other day, but as well as the neocons who are on the same side in wanting Trump gone, but sooner have him dead. And I mean, some people talk about a civil war, which is not going to happen. But yeah, I just don't. I mean,
the question to me, Mitch, is Trump going to do these mass expulsions from America of illegal immigrants? If he does, then that changes a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
it really does. It makes all the British right-wing plans for remigration much more likely to happen.
Yeah, because there's a segment of a JD Vance interview I've seen on Flying where so he basically says, okay, so one problem with illegal immigration is legit gerrymandering because the electoral point is basically based upon a population of states. So, for example, California has a large number of points because they've got the largest population, and illegal immigrants get counted as with population.
Yeah.
So California get more points, which means that Californian illegal immigrants get more political representation as time passes. Whereas, let's say someone like Aubrey over in the Midwest, her voting power gets reduced through illegal immigration. I didn't know that actually happened, but I thought because you can't account for them in the census for natural reasons, I thought therefore electoral college wasn't effective. No, it actually does.
Yeah, I wasn't aware that apparently Ohio has lost a few. I think one congressional seat. California has sort of gained 2 because of this, and it's actually what you have now is the American public are being disenfranchised in the electoral college because what was it? California, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and are like these sanctuary cities. So when immigrants come into the country, they house them in they're in these sanctuary cities, and it looks like the population of California. I mean, what is it now? 37, 38 million. It's gone up, and so they add the electoral college vote with it, and the number of congressional seats. And I mean, you can see why the Democrats sort of want this. But I mean, I looked last time. I think Biden he got 11 million votes in California, and Trump got 6 million. So, it. And the thing there is, this going back to what I think Thomas 77 was saying a few years ago. He basically said, I mean, his view on it is that California, that there's so much cheating. In his view, there's so much fortification in California that it's like it's so big it's impossible to stop at this point.
I've wondered that for a long time because it's basically a one-party Democrat state, so they can just do whatever they like there.
Yeah.
I mean, in the last election, for example, this is something I covered on my streams, and a couple of my streams and my channel got warnings over for talking election denying, was that it for certain districts or counties in California, the election had been over for weeks, like 2-3 weeks, and the official turnout and numbers and results just weren't present. And we were watching, and you had like these odd moments, like similar in Pennsylvania and parts of New York, where you had like, okay, here's the census for the population for this county. This is how many votes were cast, and it's like, hold on a sec, more people voted than actually live here, and so, and they weren't counting. They just didn't bother counting like half these votes.
Well, they have a system in America, as far as I can work out, in many states, not in all states, but in some states, where you don't need any form of ID whatsoever to vote. You just turn up at the polling station and they let you vote. You don't need to show any sort of ID, which is insane.
Yeah, it's and well, the arguments that I've always used is that black people are too stupid to get ID or something like that.
Yeah. Except they're the same as everyone else in other
But
respects.
of course, we know that's. Sorry, Hitman, go ahead.
So it reminds me, because they used to have literacy tests to vote in America, and they stopped it because it was racist. And do you wonder why?
Yeah, there was like a I remember, I think it was Turnip showing me the Louisiana one from the 50s, where there was like the basic education test to register to vote. I mean, in many ways, it's probably like a better system. In many ways, it's probably a better.
You've also hang on. There's another thing you have to remember here. A bit like in Britain, most constituencies don't matter because most constituencies almost always vote the same way. Yeah, there are some constituencies that do matter because they switch, right? And that affects who becomes the British government. The same thing is true in America, where there are parts of some states that matter. Most states don't, because most states are either red states or blue states. Yeah, you guys have been talking about California. It's a blue state. It's always going to be a blue state now. But there are only a few states that do switch, and it is only those few that the Democrats need to con. They don't need to do it all over America. They just need to do it in a few of those key states that do switch from election to election. I think that's something that's worth remembering.
Yeah, and I mean, what my bold prediction, as mentioned earlier, is that I believe that Donald Trump will flip New Jersey. I'm actually going. If I am wrong on this, I will face docs.
Well, I wouldn't promise that, mate, but we've lost Mitch, by the way. I hope he comes back. But anyway, look, there's only a few states they have to con in order to win the election, and I think that is going to be the most interesting thing about this US presidential election, whether they do that or not. The other thing that's going to be very interesting is, in the past, by like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, you knew who was going to win that. And increasingly, I see people saying, "Oh, we're not going to know for days," which to me is deeply suspicious. But
I believe, I reckon on the night of the election, we'll probably know overnight who would have won.
Maybe. We'll see.
Something Pete Quinona said on the last Old Glory Club stream was, we'll probably know by midnight who's won in terms of electoral college votes. However, in terms of who's actually won the popular vote, we probably won't know that for a time, because what any potential fortification would be for might be just to deny Trump the popular vote, which is what they used against him last time as like a weapon. You're not legitimate because you didn't win the popular vote.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I can see that. They don't want him having a big victory or a thing. The only I will say, 'cause I see people. The one state that I don't see him winning, possibly, that I think a lot of sort of assumed, is probably Arizona, because a lot of like Californians, people from California and blue states, I'm told, moved to Arizona, and that's why it's sort of flipped.
Yeah, basically, liberal Californians vote Democrat in California. Democrats trash the place, Liberals leave, go to places like Colorado and Arizona, and then they keep voting the same way and then trash those
Yeah.
states as well.
And
Yeah,
it just,
I've seen Texans moaning about that because Californians move to Texas and keep voting lefty. You know?
And then also with Arizona, there's also the matter of it's right on the border of Mexico, so there's some illegals there as well that cause problems. So
Same thing in Texas, yeah, for sure. But yeah, look, guys, we've been going 2 and 3/4 hours. Unless anyone else has something else they want to bring up, in which case, go for it. I'm just going to say I will have. Sorry, carry on, guys. Who was talking? So, AI, carry on. If you got something to say it.
no, I was just going to say, yeah. I mean, I'll head off. I need to head off now, but I'll just say, if anyone, if a Hitman or Iron Duke or Mitch, if any of you want to hop on election night to do a bit of like, watching the results, some of the results come in, early results come in, let me know. I'll do it. I'll send invites out, and yeah.
Happy
I'll
to,
see
man. Happy to.
see you all
Happy
then.
to.
Yeah.
it might be a bit late for me, sadly.
Yeah.
Yep. Aubrey Alley is saying she might join AI, and she's a genuine American lady. So there you go.
What I'll do, I think I can't view chat at the moment, but Aubrey, what I'll do is I'll go on to the Discord server, Iron Dukes, the Discord
Yep.
server.
You can do it from there, mate.
I'll do it all on there, and other people there who are other. If there's any other Americans that want to hop on, then again, let me know.
Yeah, you should try and get Don or maybe Sniper. That would be cool.
I imagine Don will be streaming himself, to be honest. But
He might be. Yeah, he might be. Yeah, that's true.
I'm gonna head off now.
I will just say, guys, there will be links to Hitman and AI's channel under the stream in a pinned comment after the stream, so you can go and check them out that way. I'm gonna play us out with a tune because I like music. Okay, that was Blow the Man Down, which is a traditional British seafaring shanty, instrumental version, obviously. And the ship in the thumbnail was the Olympic, not the Titanic, a ship that did not sink. So there you go. Thank you very much to my guests this evening, Mitch, AI, and Hitman. And we'll see you next week. In the meantime, don't let the bastards grind you down. So good night, ladies and gents.
Good night.